Hi, everybody. This is Chris McHale, co-founder and CEO of SBK and Associates, and I'm here with Ed Chung. Ed, you want to?
Hi, I'm Ed, Director of Engineering and eternal chaser of efficiency here.
The automation king. Um, anyway, we're here for the next we're doing a series of interviews with subject matter experts in SBK to talk about various items or topics that would be interesting to engineering groups. And the topic for today is on physical workstations or virtual workstations for design engineering. What works better in what cases? When would you want to use one? When would you want to use the other? And what are your options? And Ed is a definite expert on this, and he's been working in this area for a lot of our clients. So we're glad to have you on, share your expertise, Ed. So let's start. Yes. So let's start with the obvious one, the old school one. Let's start with a physical workstation for a design engineer. Tell me, when does that work best? What's the use case for that?
Oh, you tricked me because it's a little that is a hard question to answer nowadays. You know, of course, the most obvious is I'm going to call it legacy users, right? There is a value to people who have a certain workflow. They already have a workstation on their desk. They should use it. That's a use case, right? Another use case is there is a certain cost, right? If you're using it for, 4,000 hours of processing per year, then there is a time where it becomes cost efficient to own hardware instead of lease hardware, so to speak. But there isn't. I am strongly. It is very easy. I have not had trouble justifying the ROI for people in discussing, hey, the old story, right? Move to the mainframe that's located in the central location, comes back after 30 years. Finally, we've got like the performance issues ironed out. People have very good internet connections at home.
And you're, of course, when you're chatting about the mainframe, you're alluding to the cloud, basically cloud computing, which
That's
is
right.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm sorry, I interrupted you. So you've worked out the performance and other things related to cloud. That's what you were saying.
That's right. It is just on. I'm very excited about this, Chris, because we're just on the cusp of the flip over of the mainstream of this thing, right? I predict that going forward in some short amount of years, right? The standard is going to be this.
Okay, and it's funny to me because we're talking about design engineers here, and even though they're super technical people, I'd say design engineering has lagged in terms of cloud adoption for various things for good reason. Would you agree?
I think so, right? Because their demands are the highest, not surprisingly, right? Just using the 3D rendering, and also, personally, I think it's also because they're design engineers, their time is the most valuable, right? So certainly, when doing things make people slower, right? Those are the people who we do not want to make slower.
Right. Okay, so with that as the intro, I suppose, because I knew you were passionate about this, and I think and well justified you are, because I'm with you. There has been enough technological advance just even the last couple of years with GPUs and just what's available on the cloud, which I'm sure you'll get into, that has made let's call it a virtual workstation or a virtual machine in the cloud, accessible and completely usable and easy to use, right, for a design engineer. And so the thing I would say that really kicked this thing into high gear was, of course, COVID. And design engineers, maybe for the first time, went home. And before that, software engineers have worked from home. Lots of people work from home here and there. But design engineers, by and large, have gone into the building. But now they had to go home. So maybe just tell the story of what happened with our clients, because we were trying to help them with this issue that they had, and kind of what came out of it. And then we could talk about the specific use cases of virtual, and where it works really well. So maybe start with the story of what happened to us when all of our design engineer clients went home.
I think I love talking about the story, and I can go on for hours about it. But if I'm trying to shorten the story, right, they had these problems, and it wasn't just that they were at home. It was also because we couldn't buy laptops. Like
Yeah.
you cannot buy a laptop in the year 2021
2020.
without a four-month lead time, right? So they'd hire these new employees, and they just didn't have any resources. So we tried to solve this problem by using remote servers and VMs. We and other companies really trimmed down the performance, improved the performance to sort of make it work really well. And then as we got it so that, hey, these new employees you hire at home, they can connect into the server. Whether they're in Asia or Europe or the US, it became very happy. Our customers became so happy with it. We took that and we packaged it up, and now, internally we've got the recipe, so to speak, right? The recipe where we have to solve problems. We ran into the normal problems, right? This
Sure.
person says it's slow. We got to fix that. There's a cost. I think a big piece of it is cost, right? If you have enough money and you buy enough computer and you leave it on all the time, leasing doesn't cost justify versus buying.
You mean in cloud, because you're using words like leasing and whatever, but I think most people are normally used to hearing words like cloud, and even virtual workstation. We're talking about virtual in the cloud, right? And
That's
mostly on AWS is what we can do it on Azure too, but we've designed a kind of a platform that's easy for people to use. It's on AWS.
And so we had a lot of problems with what's called sharing, right? Sharing these resources on the cloud, and we had to keep the costs down. And we fixed that via process, which is wonderful because we can implement it quickly. But really what we needed was a way to make sure that the costs are controlled, make sure the costs are reported correctly.
Right. And so how do we do that?
Well, for we have a product, right, called vCAD, right, virtual engineering desktops. And what we do is we have, I think it's not a secret recipe of like, hey, when it's idle, let's put it to sleep, right? When it's not used anymore, let's shut it down. We have guidance on where to store data, right? If we're going to put this virtual CAD workstation to sleep, we'd really like your data to be stored on the server, which is not the server, which is not put to sleep, which also is good practice.
Right. So we started doing this mostly with mechanical CAD applications and software, and then there's a lot of other use cases though that sort of popped up, right?
Yeah, I could go into it, right? I mean, as we used it, it was one of those funny things. It spread like wildfire, right? One person used it for SolidWorks, and we've been using it for SolidWorks for 1 user and then 10 users because it's one team. And then there were all these benefits, such as all of those applications that don't get used often, right? And the people who don't want to have it installed on all of their computers. Great, let's put these all in this vCAD system. And then since cloud computing, one of the great benefits is pay per usage, right? Now I've got all these resources available to Chris, who only uses it for 30 minutes a year. And guess what? She only has to pay for it for 30 minutes a year because she can hop on, use it from the central cloud.
Because there are a lot of hidden costs. And I mean, people have been doing this kind of thing with tools like Citrix and all that for some years, but
that's right.
Because there's a lot of hidden costs of, for example, if I want something like MATLAB on my machine, let's just say, but I'm only going to use MATLAB once every 3 months. Now I got to load it on my machine. I have to configure it for whatever environment I'm in, or somebody else has to do that. And then I have to update it and keep it updated. And it just always seems to me anyway, that the minute I go to use something that I haven't used for 2 months, it definitely doesn't work. And then I have to go and figure out. So it's really frustrating, right? So the one thing that's great about this is that you keep this one machine updated, and then various people can share.
That's right. I mean, that's the justification we use for our ROI for that pilot, right? We had a specific medical device customer, right? They have 400 engineers. They all have SolidWorks. They all do an upgrade twice a year. It was very easy to take those exact numbers and come back and say, hey, look, you're saving one full-time employee of time, right? It came out to about, what was that for? One full-time employee of time per year by using this system to deploy the newest version of SolidWorks for all of your engineers.
Oh, and then another use case that popped up that we didn't think about until we ran into it was to do testing, right? Like what if you have a new version of something and you can't have both versions resident on one machine at the same time, your physical machine, but you could set up a virtual machine with, say, the new version of SolidWorks or MATLAB or ANSYS or whatever it is, and then you could test it on that without messing up your own environment. That was another one, right?
That's right. And, that same use case actually applies to many things, right? People don't realize, for example, doing training, right? When you're doing training for 10 people, surprise, what do you think about? You actually need 10, let's just call it workstations, 10 workstations temporarily. And they all have to be identical. This is the hard part, because you're doing a training, trying to guide them. You want to set up a, this folder looks like this, and it connects to a PDM server, which has this workflow. Ta-da, look, now you can generate 10 of those from these snapshots of images and use it during training. I always hypothesize it could be used during demos, right? We were talking to Carlos about integrity, right? He wants to show PTC RVNS to customers. Here's your demo environment. You spin it up, show it to them, let them play with it for any number of hours, and they can try and break it as much as they want, because we're going to delete it and then create a new one right afterwards. And all of these things, another key is don't require the IT or manager or operations person to reset it.
Right.
Engineer directly has one. Sorry, now I'm tooting my own horn here, right? In our vCAD, the engineer has one button that says click, use this snapshot image, make a VM.
And that's one of, to me, that was always one of the bigger things. Because, I mean, virtual machines have been around. VMware has been around for a long time. It was always sort of internally based. And then AWS and Azure come along and they say, here are all these cloud desktops or workstations you can create. And that's great too. But you create sort of a raw desktop, I would call it, or just a blank slate. And then every time you do that, you have to do just like what you do with the regular machines. You got to load stuff up, you got to configure it and make it the way you want. And then if you're in a company environment, it has to look a certain way. So if you have SolidWorks, it needs to connect to a PDM that's over here. And doing all of that work is kind of more cost, right, that's involved. And also a lot of that requires an IT person. So if you can have an environment where you go into a web portal and then you click on the thing to start, and it literally copies from a template that somebody has set up. It's just so fast, and the engineers can do it themselves, which they are always super pleased about.
That's right, because how many times have we heard that story, Chris, right? Engineer comes up with a great idea, and he uses it, and it's awesome. And then he shows it to the people sitting next to him, and he doesn't want to do it for them.
No.
So he ropes in an IT, Bob from IT, and then Bob from IT doesn't know how to, what? Right?
Yeah.
And it becomes a mess from there. But yes, it's great to empower the engineers to turn on, turn off, reset their virtual cloud machines, right? And then, and yes, we replaced Citrix at that one client I was talking about. We were exactly replacing Citrix because sorry, again, I'm tooting my own horn here, but like we worked really hard to work on performance issues, right? The way we tested that was things like using ANSYS and high performance computing, right? We found one user who was like, hey, I want to spin up 10 machines at once and then use compute and then shut them down. Great, so we've tested that, right? And we've got another user, a great test for us was he plays video games on our vCAD, right?
Really?
Realize that, like, it's about responsiveness, right? That sort of, me personally as a design, when I'm doing design work, it's like, the hesitation when I click on something and for the UI to update. So by having him play video games, like, I don't know, whatever it was, that's his filter, and that was really important to us, and we use that to show that when people are doing SolidWorks or ANSYS or Creo or AutoCAD, it works just as good as having that big workstation.
Well, and actually, in some cases, the virtual machine can work better if it's if the person has older, physical hardware sitting on their desktop. Then now, of course, the one thing, and we'll probably wrap it up with this because I don't want to go on too long, but The one thing that is critically important is a great or a good networking connection. So you're not sending files back and forth, so it doesn't have to be superb, but you are sending screen refreshes and mouse clicks back and forth, right? So you do have to have something that isn't your, I don't know, have you tried it on a plane? That was my one question for you.
I did personally try
Yeah?
it on the
Okay.
plane. It was not my favorite experience.
Okay. I didn't think so. So that is
Um,
something to bear in mind, of course.
yes, the bandwidth issue is really important, but I feel like I'm making I'm making up an analogy right now.
Mhm.
Do you remember there was a time where people said Netflix should keep sending me Blu-ray discs because streaming is not good enough quality?
Yes, I do.
Who says that now? Someone says that, don't get me wrong.
Right, because there are people that still get the discs, right?
That's right.
Yep.
But you know, in terms of like a lot of adoption, I think a lot of people have accepted, like, you know, I personally do not have a Blu-ray player on my TV, right? I
Right.
just use those streaming services.
Because of what happened is that the convenience factor that became more important to people and has become more important to people in a lot of cases versus the I want the impeccable, performance.
Right.
And it's the same thing with listening to music. If
That's right.
the real aficionado will say, give me my vinyl, even because there's this whole warmth and thing that you can hear.
Mhm.
But everybody else says, it's okay, I'll just stream it off Spotify or what have you, and I'm happy because it's so convenient.
And we are on that cusp right here. Yesterday, people said, "Hey, these cloud workstations not good enough for performance."
Yep.
And I think 1 year from now or 2 years from now, people will be like, "Oh, I remember back when people mailed me Blu-ray discs." People mailed me a laptop, which I used for stuff.
Yep. One last thing, I know I just said we should stop, but one thing that we didn't talk about, what you just said about the mailing of the laptop, because in some cases, larger corporations, but all companies should be really concerned about security and IP security. And so they would mail to, say, contractors, they would mail a machine, a laptop, and say, you have to use this one when you're working on our stuff. And it turns out that you can do that really easily with the virtual, cloud machine. You can, like anything, you can actually lock it down pretty hard. You can protect your IP a lot better. You can do that instead of sending somebody a physical laptop. It's pretty much the equivalent, right?
That's right. I mean, once someone has physical access, they can find a way into that machine.
True.
Definitely. And in fact, that's a whole other conversation. The short of it is, hey, by giving people remote access, I've saved that much time of shipping, that much time of setting it up, that much time of their training them how to use it. It resolves network issue. It resolves, did you say IP, right? There's like some IP things that I can help protect. I can control security on that machine.
Yep.
There are all kinds of benefits there.
Yep.
And yes, that's a great thing to bring up in a whole long, many sentences.
Right. I know we only covered actually a few. Maybe we'll do a part 2 of this where we cover some of the things that we didn't, but we should probably stop there. Anyway, Ed, thank you so much for your time this morning. It was really, really helpful. And it's great to see your passion about this too, because I know you've seen how well it's worked for people, and that's why you're so enthusiastic about it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me in this conversation.
Okay. All right. Have a good morning.
Okay. Goodbye.